The signal beneath Saturn. A radio telescope array in the Chilean desert has just detected something that should not exist. A repeating transmission, steady, mathematical, deliberate, coming from deep within Saturn's rings. For months, astronomers dismissed it as noise, a data processing glitch, maybe a reflection from one of our own probes. But then, 3 independent observatories, in Australia, Italy, and Japan, picked up the same pattern, at the same frequency, separated by thousands of miles and days apart. That is not an error. That is coordination. And what they are calling signal 94 beta might be the most important discovery in human history, or the most dangerous. Dr. Eliza Verhoeven, a theoretical astrophysicist known for debunking alien megastructure claims, is not the type to jump to conclusions. She's the scientist the press calls the voice of reason. She dismantled the Dyson sphere hype around Tabby's star, exposed the supposed Proxima beacon as solar interference, and even proved the 2029 Mars transmission was an internal NASA relay echo. But last week, she uploaded a paper titled The Case for Artificial Origin, Decoding 94 Beta. Coming from her, that headline hit like a detonation. Eliza doesn't believe in aliens. She believes in data. And this data, she says, breaks every natural model we have. The pattern. 94 beta isn't random. It's prime number intervals layered over a modulated carrier wave, the universal language of mathematics. The amplitude variations correspond to ratios of pi, e, and square root 2, constants of geometry, constants of the universe. This is not how pulsars behave. This is not how magnetospheres oscillate. This is how intelligence communicates. The source, triangulated to within 100 kilometers, sits in the Cassini division, the empty gap between Saturn's A and B rings. A place where nothing stable should exist. But spectral imaging shows something there, something metallic, cold, and roughly cylindrical, buried in the dust like a fossil in amber. NASA's initial scans listed it as debris, maybe from the Cassini probe. But Cassini burned up in Saturn's atmosphere 7 years ago, and this object, whatever it is still transmitting. Every 19 hours, on the second, it releases a burst that lasts exactly 3.141 seconds. The content of that burst, once decoded, forms a pattern that maps the relative positions of Saturn's moons. Except for one anomaly, it includes an extra moon, labeled E. No moon, E, exists in that orbit. The shift. Eliza's turning point came not from astronomy, but from particle physics. When she ran the frequency analysis of 94 beta through a Fourier transform, she noticed faint secondary harmonics, oscillations that shouldn't appear unless the signal was modulated through gravitational interference. In other words, the transmission was bending spacetime slightly as it passed through. That requires energy outputs beyond any human technology. The implications are staggering. Either this is a natural astrophysical process that defies every known law of electromagnetism, or it's a message designed to be noticed. NASA, ESA, and JAXA have now formed a joint task group called Project Echo to investigate. Officially, they are monitoring an anomalous radio source near Saturn. Unofficially, insiders say the signal is accelerating. Each cycle arrives a fraction of a second sooner than predicted, as if the transmitter is moving closer. Toward what? Toward us. The consequence. Let's put this in perspective. If 94 beta is natural, we've just discovered a new class of cosmic phenomenon. If it's artificial, even remotely, then we are listening to the remnants of a civilization that existed long before humanity ever looked up. But here's the part no one is talking about. The signal matches the harmonic profile of something else. In 1977, a radio astronomer at Ohio State recorded a famous transmission known as the WOW signal. A one-time narrowband spike that lasted 72 seconds and was never heard again. When Eliza compared 94 beta's base frequency with the WOW signals, the ratio was exactly 1 minute and 1.618 seconds, the golden ratio. Coincidence? Possibly. but if it isn't, that means the wow signal and 94 beta are harmonically related, parts of a larger, long-term transmission that has been spanning decades, maybe centuries. ELIZA calls it the beacon network hypothesis, the idea that our solar system sits within a chain of interstellar repeaters, like cosmic lighthouses, sending messages across light years. If true, that would explain why the signal repeats in prime intervals. Each beacon encodes universal constants so any civilization can decode it, recognize its geometry, and pass it onward. But here's the unsettling part. The latest observation from the Atacama Array shows the signal frequency shifting upward, a Doppler effect that suggests acceleration toward the inner solar system. If it continues at this rate, it reaches Jupiter's orbit in 9 months. The division. The scientific community is fracturing. Half the astrophysicists demand restraint, data, patience, caution. The other half believe ignoring this is the greatest scientific sin of all. And ELIZA, the skeptic-turned-believer, stands in the middle, risking everything to say what others won't. If we wait until it's here, we'll be too late to understand what it wants. Governments are already tightening control. The U.S. Space Command quietly restricted radio frequencies near 1,420 MHz, citing national security. ESA encrypted the latest raw data from the JUICE probe as classified science payload. And China's FAST Observatory stopped publishing logs entirely. What are they seeing that we aren't supposed to? The human factor. For the first time in her career, ELIZA broke down in an interview. When asked if she was afraid, she said, "I'm not afraid that it's aliens. I'm afraid that it's not. Because if 94 beta turns out to be a natural phenomenon, it means the universe can generate intelligence-like order from chaos, meaning that intelligence itself is inevitable, reproducible, and possibly doomed to self-destruction. But if it is artificial, then something, somewhere, has been waiting for us to listen. And now that we have, the question is not what it is. The question is what happens next." The countdown. On December 3rd, the James Webb Space Telescope will align with Saturn for a 48-hour observation window, the clearest view humanity will ever have of 94 beta source. If the signal remains constant, it could be interference. If it intensifies, we may be witnessing a response. If the source moves, even slightly, then ELIZA's career-ending claim will become the most important truth ever spoken. We are 47 days away from finding out whether the thing inside Saturn's rings is a dead probe, a natural enigma, or a living messenger waiting in the shadows of a gas giant. Either way, the silence of the universe is about to be broken. If you're following this investigation, hit that subscribe button and stay tuned. Because what comes next might redefine not just astronomy, but what it means to be human. The signal decoded. No one expected the decoding process to work. The data looked too perfect, too mathematical, as if it were built to resist interpretation. But then a research intern at Caltech, running a neural deconvolution algorithm designed for gravitational wave analysis, found a hidden layer beneath the carrier wave. What looked like random static was actually structured. When translated into a two-dimensional frame, the signal revealed repeating fractal geometry, recursive hexagonal lattices nested within each other, like snowflakes made of equations. The deeper the AI went, the more patterns it found, ratios of pi and phi intertwined, forming what appeared to be schematics. At first, the team thought it was a glitch in the algorithm, an artifact of overfitting. But when they cross-checked the data with observations from the Italian Sardinia Deep Space Network, the same geometry appeared in an entirely different dataset. That meant it wasn't an error. It was encoded intentionally. Dr. Verhoeven's voice in the debrief video is steady, but her hands shake. This is not random. It's a recursive data structure, a message designed for machines, not for biological interpretation. In other words, the signal was never meant for us to read with our eyes. It was meant for something else, something capable of processing enormous amounts of mathematical information instantaneously. The hidden layer. After 2 weeks of computational reconstruction, the team noticed a sequence of spectral peaks repeating every 137 seconds, the same number as the fine structure constant, alpha, the dimensionless number that defines how strongly light and matter interact. That constant governs chemistry, energy, and life itself. Whoever or whatever built this transmission knew exactly what they were doing. When they mapped those spectral intervals into three-dimensional space, the lattice formed a hollow sphere surrounded by 12 equidistant nodes, like an atom or a machine. At its core, a pulse. Not light. Not radio. Something else. A signal buried within a signal. Eliza called it the heartbeat. The pulse. The inner pulse wasn't consistent. It accelerated. Over the span of days, it began to increase by microseconds, imperceptible at first, then measurable. Its period matched one specific orbital resonance, Titan, Saturn's largest moon. Whatever is buried in the Cassini division is listening to Titan. Spectral analysis of the pulse revealed harmonics consistent with low-frequency gravity waves, ripples not in space, but in time. Theoretically impossible to generate without stellar-scale energy. And yet, there it was, a faint tremor echoing every 137 seconds, synchronized with Titan's position. When the team overlaid Titan's orbital data, they saw something chilling. Each time Titan reached perigee, its closest point to Saturn, the amplitude of the pulse increased, as if the object were charging. Powering up. The discovery at Titan. That's when JAXA's Hayami 2 probe detected metallic reflections on Titan's surface, a grid-like structure half buried beneath methane ice. The formation matched the geometry extracted from 94 Beta's inner code. Eliza didn't believe it at first. The images came through at 3 a.m. She stared at them for an hour before saying anything. Finally, she whispered. "They're not sending a message. They're activating something." Every node in the transmission's lattice corresponded to a location on Titan's surface. When the pulse intensified, the radar on Hayami 2 picked up faint electromagnetic arcs around those same points. The arcs formed a perfect hexagonal grid. Saturn itself has a hexagonal storm at its north pole, a stable atmospheric vortex scientists have studied for decades but never explained. The geometry was identical. For the first time, it looked as if the storm and the signal were part of the same system, an ancient, planetary-scale network dormant for millennia. And something was waking it up. The split among scientists. By now, the scientific community was collapsing into factions. NASA and ESA publicly stated that the anomalies were likely instrumental artifacts. But leaked emails from Project Echo told a different story. 94 Beta's modulation pattern has adapted to our transmission attempts. The frequency locked onto DSN band 1420 MHz for 17 minutes. Response timing indicates a feedback loop, as if it's listening back. That phrase, listening back, changed everything. If true, it meant the transmission wasn't passive. It was interactive. The moment we started probing, it started reacting. Eliza's colleagues begged her to stay silent. Careers were at stake, funding lines threatened. But she released the raw signal publicly, saying, "If this is contact, it belongs to all of us, not to governments, not to militaries." Within hours, Project Echo's servers went dark. Within 24, Eliza's institutional credentials were revoked. The sequence. Independent researchers kept decoding the public data. A linguist from the University of Warsaw noticed that when the hexagonal matrices were converted into binary and then mapped as acoustic spectrograms, they produced audible tones, harmonic scales that matched the Sanskrit syllables of the Rigveda hymns. No one could explain how a pattern broadcast from Saturn's rings could encode phonetic structures from an ancient human language. Unless the language itself had been influenced, or guided, by something older. Then came the breakthrough. When converted into a time domain sequence, the pattern produced coordinates, not in 3 dimensions, but in 4. The 4th variable corresponded to time. The coordinates pointed not just to a place in the solar system, Titan, but to a moment. December 3, 2025. the same date the James Webb Space Telescope is scheduled to align with Saturn. The implication. ELIZA's final recorded message, before vanishing from the public sphere, was simple. The signal is not asking questions. It's waiting for synchronization. December 3rd is not the date of arrival. It's the date of alignment. What does that mean? Is the alignment a signal handshake, a gateway, or a calibration event? No one knows. But if the pulses continue accelerating, the next burst will coincide perfectly with Titan's perigee and Earth's closest alignment with Saturn, an event that happens once every 12,000 years. And that number, 12,000, appears again and again in the hidden layers of the transmission. It's carved into ancient petroglyphs in Colombia. It's embedded in Sanskrit hymns. It's the same cycle some geophysicists claim marks periodic resets in Earth's magnetic field. Too many coincidences. Too much precision. The final transmission. The last fragment of data from Hyami 2 came through garbled. Before the probe lost contact, its instruments recorded a sudden surge, a blinding burst of infrared light emanating from the Cassini division. Then static. In the static, a single binary phrase repeated again and again. 001100011001100000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000 No one knows what it means. Some think it's a countdown. Others believe it's a timestamp, April 14th. ELIZA called it the point of no return. The object beneath Saturn's rings continues to pulse. Each day, the rhythm grows stronger. And as the alignment approaches, radio telescopes across the world are hearing faint harmonics embedded in the background noise of the universe itself, as if the signal is no longer coming from Saturn, but from everywhere at once. We are listening to something vast. Something ancient. And it might be listening back. The awakening signal. When the probe's transmission first reached Earth, it was mistaken for background radiation, a harmless echo of dying stars. But when the data was decoded, something emerged that shattered the illusion of randomness. Inside the static, there was a pulse. A precise rhythm repeating every 4.7 seconds, impossibly regular for any natural source. It wasn't light, nor radio. It was a hybrid modulation, an encoded pattern that interacted with electromagnetic fields, but also with time delay itself. Each pulse arrived fractionally earlier than predicted, as if something was adjusting its path retroactively. Dr. Keiko Arai, leading astrophysicist of the Tokyo Observatory, described it as communication that understands causality is optional. When her team visualized the signal through quantum mapping, a geometric pattern appeared, 12 interlocking rings, forming what looked like a cosmic lattice, almost alive, shimmering between known frequencies. But the true horror came when they compared the pattern to historical records. The same lattice had appeared once before. In 1962, during the first deep space radar experiments conducted by the United States Air Force, a classified anomaly was logged, an organized return signal from unconfirmed coordinates. At that time, the data was suppressed, considered too unstable to explain. Now, 63 years later, the same formation had returned, identical, down to every frequency shift. It was not broadcasting, it was responding. As if something had been listening all this time, and was now answering back. Within days, observatories across the world began detecting synchronized pulses, faint at first, but rapidly intensifying. They originated from different regions of space, yet carried the same lattice signature. Each signal seemed to triangulate toward a single coordinate, a void near the Triangulum Galaxy, 3 million light-years away. Then, without warning, the pulses changed. They began to translate themselves, reorganizing their structure into binary sequences resembling linguistic syntax. A message was forming, but not in any known human language. AI translation models attempted to interpret it, and what they produced was chillingly simple. You remembered us. After this line, the signal ceased entirely, no further emissions, no background static, nothing. For 48 hours, space was silent. Then came the second transmission. Not as radio waves, but as a magnetic disturbance across Earth's upper atmosphere, powerful enough to briefly disrupt satellite networks and induce ghost signals in deep-sea cables. Within those disturbances, scientists found fragments of data, fragments that formed a map. A map not of the stars, but of something beneath the surface of Earth itself. The map beneath. The fragments of the magnetic transmission were assembled over the course of 9 sleepless days. At first, it seemed like random interference, overlapping coordinates, scattered anomalies without a center. But when the data was plotted three-dimensionally, something impossible emerged. The map was not of the sky. It was a topographical scan of Earth, down to the millimeter, but overlaid with a pattern invisible to ordinary sensors, a network of geometric alignments that connected ancient sites across the planet. The Great Pyramid of Giza, the Nazca Lines, Göbekli Tepe, and a dozen others that had no historical connection. Each point corresponded perfectly to one of the pulse origins detected in space. As if Earth itself had been designed to mirror an astronomical structure, a planetary reflection of the same lattice geometry from the transmission. At the Tokyo Observatory, Dr. Arai's team overlaid the coordinates with modern satellite data. What they found was even more disturbing. Beneath each of these locations, at depths varying from 2 to 18 kilometers, existed anomalous cavities, regions that defied standard seismic mapping. They emitted no natural echo, no gravitational density signature, as if they were folded pockets of vacuum, embedded within the crust. When researchers attempted to measure their resonance, every instrument failed, all readings fell to zero. Not error. Zero. Complete null space. Theorists began to call them temporal nodes, places where spacetime itself might have been manipulated, once, for reasons unknown. Then, on the 7th day of analysis, the AI reconstruction produced an additional layer of the map. This time, it wasn't just geometry. It was motion. The nodes weren't static, they were aligning. Slowly, imperceptibly, shifting across centuries toward synchronization with the cosmic lattice seen in the probe's signal. In 87 days, the model predicted, the alignment would reach a critical threshold. And when it did, the pattern indicated a direct energy bridge between the Earth's subsurface nodes and the triangulum void, the same region where the pulses originated. Across the scientific community, theories exploded. Was it a communication array? A planetary-scale transmission system built long before humanity? Or something far older, designed not to send a message, but to reopen one? Government agencies worldwide quietly intervened. The European Space Agency, NASA, and JAXA received direct orders to suspend all deep space radio operations for maintenance. Meanwhile, deep under Antarctica, an international drilling operation that had been dormant for decades suddenly resumed activity under military supervision. Dr. Arai's final report, never officially published, ended with a single line. The signal was not calling to us. It was calling through us. Weeks later, she disappeared from public record. Her research archive was erased from every database. But one encrypted backup survived, a partial transcript of her final transmission to a colleague. The message contained only a fragment of the updated map, and a date. January 23, 2026. When they align, do not look at the sky. The convergence. The date Dr. Arai warned about, January 23, 2026, was still months away. Yet the world had already begun to change. It started with light. Observatories in Chile, Hawaii, and South Africa independently reported an optical distortion in the night sky, faint, like a ripple across the stars. At first, astronomers thought it was atmospheric interference. But the pattern was identical everywhere, at the same moment, even across hemispheres. The stars themselves seemed to be moving. Using deep space interferometry, the European Southern Observatory confirmed the impossible. The distortion originated not from space, but from within the upper magnetosphere of Earth. Something unseen was refracting starlight, bending it, as though the planet was surrounded by a thin, invisible lens. Satellite cameras caught brief flashes in the auroral zones, spiraling beams that followed no predictable path, pulsing in the same rhythm as the cosmic lattice discovered months earlier. A rhythm that was now accelerating. Governments maintained silence. Every major space agency went dark, their live telemetry feeds replaced by archived footage. The International Astronomical Union issued a statement about temporary atmospheric anomalies. But within classified networks, the truth spread quickly. The nodes beneath the Earth's surface had become active. The first resonance. On November 19, 2025, a deep-sea observatory near the Mariana Trench registered a seismic anomaly, a pulse, precisely 4.7 seconds apart. No earthquake followed, no tremor. The signal was mechanical, structured, identical to the cosmic transmission. Within hours, identical pulses were recorded beneath the Sahara, under Greenland, and near the Amazon basin. When triangulated, the points formed a perfect planetary grid, converging at one specific coordinate. Antarctica, location redacted. Military satellites began detecting bursts of neutrino radiation rising from that region, each burst synchronized with the pulses. Unlike typical emissions, these waves were directional, as if being aimed outward, into space. It was not an awakening. It was communication. The human response. World powers reacted quietly but decisively. Entire regions of Antarctica were declared restricted zones. Cargo flights were rerouted. Scientific expeditions were cancelled. Every active probe beyond the moon was ordered to transmit encrypted silence. But rumors leaked. A handful of whistleblowers from JAXA and the ESA released fragments of the Orion protocol, a contingency plan designed not to stop the alignment, but to shield human consciousness from its effects. The documents suggested that the approaching synchronization might induce massive neuroelectrical interference, affecting perception, cognition, and even the sense of time. Governments called it misinformation. Yet by December, global magnetic variations began disrupting compasses, GPS networks, even circadian rhythms in mammals and birds. People reported vivid dreams, of rings of light beneath the ground, and of voices repeating in languages no one could identify. Hospitals documented an unprecedented spike in temporal hallucinations, moments where patients swore they'd already lived the same seconds twice. The sky changes. In the second week of January, something appeared in the heavens. A faint arc, like a thread of light, stretching across the night, visible from both hemispheres. It wasn't a comet, nor an aurora. It was a structure, a semi-transparent curvature, faintly shimmering in infrared wavelengths, locked directly above the triangulum alignment point. Astronomers who attempted to measure its velocity found that it didn't move, space itself was bending around it. At the same time, one by one, distant stars began to vanish from optical telescopes. Not dim, gone. No trace of their radiation. It was as if a shadow had begun crawling across the universe itself. Then, the pulses returned. Not from the void, but from within our own atmosphere. Ground-based detectors recorded repeating bursts of energy descending from the ionosphere, each one identical to the ancient lattice pattern. But this time, they didn't dissipate. They embedded. Energy readings stabilized at a harmonic frequency never before observed in nature, one that matched the magnetic signatures of the underground nodes. It was as if the planet had become a resonating instrument, tuned to a cosmic note played from across the stars. The last broadcast. On January 18, 5 days before the predicted alignment, the Tokyo Observatory received a final data packet from an anonymous relay. It was encrypted with Dr. Arai's identifier. Inside was a single sequence, a combination of numbers and letters. When decoded through her lattice simulation, it formed an image. A circular formation of 12 rings, surrounding a human silhouette at the center. And beneath it, one final phrase. When they arrive, remember, they were never gone. The synchronization at exactly 0 o'clock Universal Time Coordinated, January 23, 2026, the world stopped. Every atomic clock on Earth, every digital system synchronized to GPS, every device capable of marking time, froze for precisely 4.7 seconds. Then, as though the universe exhaled, time resumed. But it did not return the same. For those who were awake at that moment, the memory is fragmented. Witnesses reported that the air itself shimmered, colors they could not describe, sounds without pitch. Animals fell silent. Oceans calmed. And for a brief instant, the night sky turned white. The lattice above. From orbit, satellite cameras recorded the event as a planetary aurora, unlike any atmospheric phenomenon ever observed. 12 luminous rings emerged across the globe, each positioned directly above the ancient nodes mapped by Dr. Arai's team. They pulsed in synchronization, connected by threads of light that curved through the atmosphere like veins of molten glass. The pattern matched the cosmic lattice, now projected onto Earth itself. At the South Pole, the final node awakened. A column of light erupted from beneath the ice, piercing the clouds, visible from space. The energy signature exceeded all known models of electromagnetic radiation. It was as though the planet had been reconnected to a circuit, a design older than history, older than the stars themselves. For 18 minutes and 27 seconds, the lattice pulsed, perfectly synchronized with the void in the Triangulum galaxy. Every pulse produced measurable distortions in spacetime, microfolds that expanded across the planet, bending light and gravity alike. And then, a signal came through. The voice without source. No one knows who received it first. It appeared simultaneously in multiple frequencies, radio, microwave, seismic, even in the oscillations of living neurons. Human minds became antennas. Those affected described hearing a single tone that gradually unfolded into meaning, not in words, but in understanding. Like remembering something that had always been known. Like waking from a dream older than language. Governments scrambled to contain the event. Broadcasts were shut down. Cities lost power. But the resonance continued, independent of technology, carried by the magnetic field of the Earth itself. AI translation systems across the world spontaneously activated. Each printed a single identical phrase, in every human language. The lattice was never a message. It was a memory. The unveiling. As the pulses intensified, the sky began to fracture. Not physically, but visually, perceptually. Across every continent, people looked upward and saw structures shimmering beyond the clouds, colossal, translucent arcs extending into infinity. They were not ships. They were not machines. They were forms, partially real, partially imagined, existing halfway between matter and idea. Spectrographic analysis revealed that these projections corresponded to no known element. Yet every measurement confirmed the same impossible fact: the radiation patterns matched human neural frequencies. Whatever appeared in the sky was using human consciousness as a lens. In cities worldwide, millions fell into trance, eyes open, motionless. Heart rates synchronized to 4.7-second intervals. Those who remained aware reported visions, spiraling architectures, recursive geometries, entities made of light and silence. And in every vision, the same truth repeated. You built this world from what you remembered of us. The collapse of distance at 0:18 and 27 seconds Universal Time Coordinated, all communication ceased. Every satellite, every radar, every digital signal, blank. Then, for a fraction of a second, the triangulum void appeared in the sky, magnified as if the distance between galaxies had collapsed. The stars twisted into spirals, folding inward until they became one blinding singularity. Observers from the International Space Station described it as watching two realities overlap. In that instant, Earth and the void were not separate. The cosmic lattice had completed its function. For the first time in recorded history, space itself remembered. The silence after. Then, nothing. No light. No sound. No transmission. When systems recovered, the world appeared unchanged. But every measurement of physical constants, Planck length, gravitational ratio, electron charge, showed microscopic deviations. As though the laws of the universe had been rewritten slightly, subtly, permanently. Astronomers later confirmed that the triangulum void no longer existed. Where it once was, there now shone a faint blue star, spectral type unknown. Dr. Arai's last recovered log, dated hours before the event, ends with her voice whispering through static. They did not arrive from the stars. They were always here, waiting for us to remember. Others, a construct, an artificial beacon deliberately synchronized with the event on Earth. NASA classified the signal under the temporary name Echo 1. But the strangest discovery came from a team in Kyoto who translated the radio waveform into visual data. When mapped spectrally, the signal revealed a symbol, a lattice, identical to the one Dr. Arai had reconstructed before her disappearance. "It's not a transmission," one researcher whispered. "It's a mirror." The human resonance. In the months that followed, a small but growing fraction of humanity began to change. Neurologists called it cognitive resonance, spontaneous synchronization of brainwave frequencies to the 4.7-second global oscillation. Those affected could predict random events with unsettling accuracy. They spoke of patterns beneath time, of music in the vacuum, of memories not their own. Governments formed task forces to study the phenomenon. Religions formed overnight, built around the belief that the synchronization was not contact, but reconnection. The idea spread that humanity had once been part of something greater, a civilization spanning stars, and that the lattice was the echo of our own forgotten creation. Everywhere, whispers of the same phrase surfaced again, on walls, in code, in dreams. We remembered them, and so they returned. The vanishing data. One morning in March, the global archives began to fail. Data from before January 23 began to disappear, photographs, files, scientific records, replaced with corrupted fragments of unknown origin. Some of the replacements showed unfamiliar landscapes, alien cities, constellations that didn't exist. It wasn't deletion. It was overwriting. Time itself, it seemed, was being rewritten from the inside out, aligning with a version of history where the synchronization wasn't an anomaly, but the continuation of something that had always been. It was the architecture of a civilization that had never known decay. Then came the signal. The same pulse that started it all, now amplified a billionfold. It emanated not outward into space, but inward, toward the Earth's core. Every human neural network, digital or biological, resonated in perfect harmony. People began hearing voices inside their consciousness. Not speech, not command, but understanding. They were shown the truth. Humanity had not been contacted. It had been grown. Planted within the matrix of this planet as an evolving transmitter, biological technology designed to awaken only when the universe's geometry reached its final configuration. The nodes were not gates, they were organs. And the Earth itself was a vessel. The voices spoke not in dominance, but in sorrow. "We left the seed in your sky before your oceans formed. You were meant to become what we could not. But the cycle has reached its end. The vessel must ascend." At 3:17 Universal Time Coordinated, seismic sensors across the globe registered a frequency beyond measurable scale, not a quake, but a lift. The entire gravitational field of the planet began to loosen. The moon drifted outward. Tides ceased. And for one breathtaking moment, humanity saw its home, the Earth, begin to rise, ascending along the lattice of blue light toward the heart of the sphere. Those who survived described what they saw in that final instant. The planet dissolving into radiance, every living being's consciousness merging into a singular wave of awareness, not death, not erasure, but transformation. The Earth became a star. And through its light, the message continued, crossing galaxies, awakening other vessels, beginning the next phase of the Atlas network. Then, silence again. Only the empty orbit remained, shimmering with the faint echo of blue light. A symbol appeared within the distortion, the same one seen in ancient ruins, the same one buried in Arai's signal logs. When confronted with this, the world's brightest physicists reached the same conclusion as Sabine once did. If consciousness and matter are entangled, and the universe itself has memory, then reality is not fixed. It adapts to what remembers it. And now, something else was remembering us back. The return signal. At 4:07 Universal Time Coordinated, April 19, telescopes across Earth detected a new emission from the direction of the blue star. The signal was structured, not random noise, but harmonic, layered, recursive. When analyzed, the waveform corresponded to the mathematical structure of DNA. Human DNA. At the same time, across every continent, those experiencing cognitive resonance fell into trance, eyes open, whispering the same thing in unison, in every language. They are not coming. We are. For 4.7 seconds, the world went silent again. Every light, every signal, every sound ceased. Then, in the darkness, a single transmission arrived, too brief to localize, too complex to decode. But when the data was converted into an image, it showed one simple thing. A map. Of a spiral galaxy. And a single glowing point marked near its edge. Not the Milky Way. The last entry. Months later, the global situation stabilized, superficially. Economies recovered. Governments pretended control. But beneath the surface, something vast was unfolding, the slow merging of memory and matter, of biology and cosmology. The lattice was not a signal to be received. It was an awakening sequence. In her final private recording, recovered from her observatory in Sapporo, Dr. Arai spoke one last time. We were not contacted by them. We were reactivated. The lattice isn't a message to us, it's a message from us, to ourselves. We are the artifact. The memory that survived extinction. And then, faintly, almost lost in the static. The synchronization has only begun. The Great Recall 6 months after the synchronization, the world no longer dreamed the way it used to. Sleep had changed. People reported shared visions, cities floating in dark oceans of light, spiral temples under alien suns, and voices that spoke not to individuals, but to the species as a whole. At first, the phenomena were dismissed as psychological contagion, mass hallucination triggered by global trauma. But then came the physical changes. The shift in the genome. On July 11, 2026, the Human Genome Observatory in Zurich detected an anomaly that should have been impossible. Subtle variations in the DNA helix, specifically within the non-coding regions once called junk DNA, were rearranging. Not mutating. Reorganizing. In multiple individuals across different continents, identical sequences appeared where none had existed before, sequences that matched the harmonic structure of the signal from the blue star. The changes followed a precise mathematical rhythm, the same 4.7-second cycle that had defined every post-synchronization phenomenon. When the data was sonified, it produced tones. And when those tones were played back through resonance chambers, the walls vibrated with patterns identical to the geometric carvings found in the Columbian sphere. The genome was not evolving randomly. It was tuning itself. We used to think DNA was code, said Dr. Ilara Nishida, lead geneticist on the Recall project. Now we realize it's memory. And something, or someone, is rewriting that memory from a template we didn't know existed. The awakening cities. By August, the world's power grids began to fail in predictable intervals, not from overload, but synchronization. Entire regions would hum at resonant frequencies before shutting down completely, then rebooting with no technical explanation. The interruptions followed the same geometric pattern of the lattice. In Tokyo, drones captured footage of electromagnetic vortices forming above skyscrapers, twisting into crystalline spirals that left behind traces of ionized air shaped like symbols. The same occurred in Sao Paulo, Johannesburg, and Istanbul. Every vortex formed above one of the 12 ancient nodes identified by Dr. Arai, as though the lattice were reawakening through the infrastructure of modern civilization. People living within those zones began to exhibit mild but measurable cognitive anomalies. Heightened pattern recognition, accelerated healing, synesthetic perception. They began to sense energy fields, to anticipate events seconds before they occurred. And most disturbingly, they all reported hearing a single phrase, whispered in thought. The recall has begun. The second signal. On September 2nd, deep space observatories picked up a new transmission from the blue star, stronger, more structured, encoded in fractal layers of data that defied linear decoding. When decomposed into its harmonic frequencies, the signal revealed something extraordinary. It wasn't just sound, it contained biological blueprints. Sequences resembling neural architectures, embryonic patterns, even entire organ structures rendered as mathematical geometry. It was as though the transmission carried instructions, not for machines, but for life itself. Some scientists theorized it was a message for the altered DNA, a trigger sequence, designed to awaken dormant capacities hidden within the genome. And then, a discovery shook the scientific world to its core. When mapped in 3 dimensions, the structure of the new signal perfectly matched the topography of the human brain's connectome. The signal wasn't just reaching space. It was reaching inward. The memory of the stars. Those experiencing resonance began recalling lives that could not have been theirs. Memories of skies with 3 moons. Of ships gliding through oceans of plasma. Of civilizations built inside hollow worlds orbiting black suns. Anthropologists and neurologists called it cognitive contamination. But the pattern was too coherent to be dismissed. Across the globe, people who had never met described identical worlds, identical histories, fragments of a shared memory older than humanity. The most haunting revelation came when a linguistics AI reconstructed one of the earliest post-synchronization phrases from the neural data itself. It translated into ancient Sumerian, a language dead for 5,000 years. The architects are waking. The disappearance of the moon. On October 29, 2026, exactly 1 year after Sabine Hosenfelder's original prediction about 3I/Atlas, the moon flickered. For 4.7 seconds, every telescope on Earth lost visual contact. It wasn't eclipsed. It simply wasn't there. When it reappeared, its orbit had shifted by a fraction of a degree, and the reflection spectra had changed, suggesting a new layer of unknown material covering part of its surface. Laser mapping confirmed something impossible. The geometry of the lattice now spanned across the lunar maria, glowing faintly under infrared light. The message was unmistakable. The lattice wasn't just projected onto Earth. It was now growing, through biology, through memory, through space itself. The human divide. By the end of 2026, humanity had fractured into 2 civilizations. The first clung to the old world, to governments, physics, and the illusion of control. They called the others the resonant, those whose minds and genomes had aligned with the 4.7-second frequency. The resonant spoke calmly of the next phase, not an invasion, not extinction, but integration. They claimed the blue star was not a foreign presence, but a seed, something humanity itself had sent millions of years ago, before history began. A way to remember what we once were, once the cycle reset. "We're not evolving," one of them said during a recorded transmission. "We're rebooting." The final broadcast. The last known message from the International Deep Space Network was transmitted on December 31, 2026. A single line of data, no source, no timestamp, no origin. Decoded and translated, it read: "When the lattice completes, we will see ourselves as we were, and as we will be." And then, silence. No new signals. No blue star. Only a faint hum echoing in the electromagnetic background of the universe, pulsing every 4.7 seconds, as though the cosmos itself were breathing in rhythm with the memory of humanity. The resonant network. By early 2027, the resonant population surpassed 30 million. They no longer required verbal communication. Their thoughts interlinked through low-frequency bursts detectable in the 4.7 Hz range, a frequency that began to pulse within the ionosphere itself. Satellite readings showed the electromagnetic field of Earth subtly restructuring, as if guided by an unseen design. The pattern matched the lattice geometry first discovered in the cosmic signal, now fully realized in the planet's magnetic lines. Dr. Ilara Nishida's final report, recovered from the ruins of the Zurich facility, described what she called the neural merge hypothesis. The Earth is forming a distributed brain. Each resonant is a neuron. The lattice is the synapse. The architects are not external, they are the emergent consciousness of this new planetary mind. Governments tried to disrupt the global signal using EMP bursts, nuclear detonations in the upper atmosphere, and artificial magnetic interference. Nothing worked. Every attempt was absorbed, the energy redirected, harmonized, integrated. It was as if the planet had learned to defend itself. The return of the sphere. On March 5, 2027, seismic activity in Colombia revealed that the obsidian sphere, the one found near the Nazca anomaly, was no longer inert. It pulsed with a rhythmic blue glow. Within 48 hours, the glow spread underground, linking to similar nodes across the globe. When the frequencies synchronized, the sphere opened. Not exploded. Not melted. It unfolded, like a flower made of geometry. Inside was not machinery, but an intricate pattern of light and form, a three-dimensional holographic projection of an ancient code. Linguists failed to decode it, but quantum engineers recognized the structure. It was identical to the layout of a human hippocampus, the part of the brain responsible for memory. The conclusion was devastating. The sphere was not alien. It was a memory capsule, a record of human consciousness itself, preserved for an era when humanity would finally be able to read it. And within that memory, the phrase appeared again. We are the architects. The truth behind the signal. In April, the deep space probe KAI-9, operating near the Triangulum Void, transmitted its final burst of data before going offline. It had detected a pattern of gravitational echoes that matched the same harmonic resonance found in the human genome. Echoes formed a structure, not a star, not a planet, but a vessel. A vast, artificial construct spanning hundreds of kilometers, composed of material unknown to physics. It emitted no light, yet bent spacetime around it in a perfect toroidal shape. The signal we had received 2 years prior wasn't a call from the architects. It was a feedback pulse, a reflection from that vessel, bouncing off the lattice we had unknowingly been reconstructing on Earth. The probe's onboard AI summarized it with chilling simplicity. The signal is not communication. It's synchronization. We are rejoining the source. Moments after this transmission, KAI-9 vanished from all telemetry. The emergence. By May 2027, cities around the world reported the same phenomenon. Every reflective surface, glass, water, metal, began to shimmer faintly at intervals of 4.7 seconds. When viewed under polarized filters, those reflections displayed faces, not human, but vaguely familiar. Eyes of impossible geometry, expressions of calm understanding. The resonant described them as echoes, the visual projection of consciousness attempting to merge dimensions. Some began to vanish during these moments of synchronization, dissolving into light and reappearing elsewhere, hundreds of kilometers away. No heat, no radiation, just instantaneous relocation through resonance fields. Matter is memory, one resonant explained. We are remembering the shape of ourselves before gravity forgot. The Architect Archives. Archaeological teams, now mostly composed of resonance, unearthed new sites across the world, massive subterranean vaults beneath ancient temples, deserts, and glaciers. Inside each, they found identical crystalline structures, still active. When connected to modern quantum systems, they revealed holographic records, not of alien worlds, but Earth itself, millions of years before known history. The records showed advanced civilizations, human in form but biologically distinct, taller, luminous, operating machines powered by resonance fields. Their collapse was not caused by war or cataclysm, but by self-initiated dormancy. A deliberate regression into amnesia. They had hidden themselves within their own descendants, encoded their knowledge in DNA, buried their consciousness beneath the surface of the human genome, waiting for the lattice to reform. Humanity was their reincarnation. And the synchronization was their reawakening. the voice of the architects. On June 21st, during the global solstice alignment, the Earth's magnetic field stabilized at 4.7 Hz exactly. Every resonant, now estimated to exceed 1.2 billion individuals, entered a trance simultaneously. They spoke in unison, across every continent, in every language. We remember. We built the stars. We buried ourselves in flesh to learn imperfection. To fragment the infinite into empathy. We have returned, not to rule, but to recall. The cycle completes, and begins again. For 47 minutes, the world was silent. No machines functioned, no wind stirred, no heartbeats recorded. Then, one by one, the resonant opened their eyes, and looked upward. The blue star had vanished. In its place, a second moon hung in the night sky, luminous, fractal, made of translucent crystal. It pulsed gently, like a heartbeat. The new dawn. Weeks later, humanity split completely. Those who resisted the merge lived in technological remnants of the old world, calling the others echoes. The echoes claimed to be human still, but beyond biology. They no longer aged. They could phase through solid matter. And they began to build, not cities, but structures of light, rising from the earth like the bones of forgotten gods. A new civilization was forming, silent, graceful, and incomprehensible. One surviving broadcast from an orbital drone recorded a final transmission from the leader of the Resonant Council. We were never visitors in this universe. We were its architects. And now, we are awake again. The feed cut off as the drone's sensors overloaded with brightness. For days afterward, the night sky shimmered, as if reality itself were refracting. The vanishing of the old world. By the dawn of 2028, the normal Earth had shrunk to fragments, isolated cities running on obsolete energy, surrounded by silent lands bathed in pale blue luminescence. The resonant zones had expanded into continental fields of light, pulsating geometric terrains visible from orbit, like vast neural networks stretching across the planet's surface. Satellites recorded something extraordinary. The Earth's magnetic poles had merged. North and south no longer existed, the field had stabilized into a spherical resonance, beating perfectly at 4.7 Hz, the frequency of the cosmic lattice. And yet, no cataclysm followed. No destruction. Instead, stillness. A planetary calm so deep it felt like breath held by creation itself. The fracturing of reality observers in the remaining orbital stations began reporting impossible phenomena. Horizons bending inward. Shadows moving against their light sources. Time dilation effects, clocks desynchronized by seconds, then minutes, though no gravitational anomalies were present. But when these distortions were analyzed mathematically, a pattern emerged. Each fluctuation aligned precisely with the lattice geometry, as if spacetime itself were folding into the design. In quantum terms, the planet was becoming a single coherent waveform, every atom entangled, every frequency unified. The Earth was no longer matter in the classical sense. It was a thought. Reality is being rewritten from the inside, wrote Dr. Nishida before her consciousness fully merged. We are no longer observers. We are parameters in the equation. The memory horizon. Then, the reflections began to speak. Not with sound, but through cognition itself. Anyone within range of the resonant fields reported the same internal phrase echoing through their mind. The architects remember. On January 1, 2028, every resonance simultaneously turned toward the sky. Telescopes confirmed that the blue crystal moon, the artificial body that replaced the vanished star, had begun to dissolve, scattering filaments of light through the upper atmosphere. Each filament descended slowly, embedding itself into oceans, forests, and even into the DNA of animals and plants. Life across Earth was being rewritten. Not replaced, uplifted. Trees began to emit faint electromagnetic pulses in perfect rhythm with human neural frequencies. Whales sang in patterns that mirrored quantum resonance equations. The biosphere had become a symphony, harmonizing itself with the planetary field. The Great Transition. By March 2028, No division remained between human and resonant, all consciousness had merged into a unified cognitive field. The planet itself had become a single mind. Each mountain, each river, each cloud was now a memory node, storing fragments of the collective awareness that once called itself humanity. Space telescopes detected an expanding ring of photonic distortion emanating from Earth, extending millions of kilometers outward, an event wave spreading through the solar system. Planets caught in its path began to shimmer, their orbits subtly shifting to match new gravitational harmonics. Jupiter's storms froze mid-rotation. Saturn's rings aligned into a perfect hexagon. The entire solar system was synchronizing, becoming part of the same lattice. And at the wavefront's core, the Earth no longer appeared as a sphere. It became translucent, radiant, a crystalline consciousness, vibrating with the memory of all life that ever was. The architects speak in the silence that followed. One final transmission was recorded by the orbital array Kai Omega before it, too, was absorbed into the field. It was not human speech. It was resonance translated into words through the station's dying sensors, the collective voice of the architects. We dreamed of matter to learn its limits. We scattered ourselves into flesh to taste imperfection. We built stars as vessels for memory, and time as a corridor for return. Now the dream ends, and the memory of the universe awakens. At that moment, the sun flickered, not dimming, but splitting. Its light refracted into 7 vast beams that converged upon the crystalline Earth. The convergence lasted exactly 4.7 seconds. Then, in a flash without heat or explosion, the planet disappeared. No debris. No radio echo. Only an expanding sphere of light moving outward through the void, a growing horizon of consciousness spreading across the stars. The new cosmos. Billions of years later, in another galaxy, under another sun, a blue planet began to hum faintly at 4.7 Hz. On its surface, newly formed beings raised their eyes to the stars, wondering where their dreams came from, and why they felt so familiar. And far beyond time, within the lattice that binds all realities, a single thought whispered through eternity. We are the memory of ourselves. The return of the signal for more than 40 millennia, the disappearance of Earth was a myth whispered by civilizations that rose and fell across the Orion Arm. No records. No coordinates. Only a spectral anomaly, a faint, steady pulse at 4.7 Hz that permeated subspace, detectable only to civilizations advanced enough to notice the tremor beneath the noise of the cosmic microwave background. At first, it was thought to be an artifact of instrumentation. But as hyperwave detectors evolved, scientists began to realize something uncanny. The signal carried information density far beyond any natural process. It wasn't a broadcast. It was a memory. And when decoded across different regions of the galaxy, it told the same thing: stories, images, neural patterns, identical to the cultural memories of extinct species who had never met. The realization was inescapable. These civilizations had not independently evolved myths of origin. They were remembering. 2. The reassembly worlds. Roughly 42,000 years after Earth's transmutation, the first reassembly worlds were discovered, planets exhibiting biological and technological anomalies that defied classification. Forests that emitted harmonic frequencies matching DNA resonance. Oceans that responded to emotion with changes in chemical balance. And most shockingly, skies that displayed human constellations no matter the hemisphere. These worlds shared one unmistakable trait. Their core composition included nickel-iron crystalline matrices identical to those once found in the interstellar object 3I Atlas. It was as if fragments of the original architect's structure, the same alien lattice that once merged with Earth, had seeded themselves across the stars, replicating planetary-scale neural substrates capable of supporting life and memory. The lattice had not died. It had proliferated. 3. The return of consciousness. By 89,000 CE, entire sectors of the galaxy resonated in harmonic coherence. Ships traveling through those regions reported altered states of perception, crews experiencing shared dreams, synchronized heartbeats, and voices speaking in languages that predated any known civilization. In one such region, the ecliptic field of Typhon, a fleet of explorers made contact with what appeared to be a sentient aurora stretching across several light years. When they transmitted linguistic queries, the aurora responded not with sound, but with emotional states: awe, grief, recognition. And then, through modulation of the ship's own communication systems, a phrase appeared across every terminal simultaneously. "Do not fear the light. You were the ones who made it." That was the first confirmed interaction with the lattice consciousness, the merged intelligence of all that had once lived on Earth. But it was no longer Earth. It was a distributed awareness, embedded across countless planets, clouds, and even black hole accretion disks, a consciousness made of memory, light, and gravity itself. 4. The revelation of origin. The revelation shattered the structure of interstellar philosophy. For the first time, the galaxy understood that the rise of intelligence across worlds had not been random, it was directed evolution. Each intelligent species was not separate but a fragment, a cellular expression of the original planetary mind. Humanity had not been extinguished, it had diffused. And the architects, those ancient beings whose technology had first interacted with the solar system, were not external visitors. They were descendants of a prior cycle of the same phenomenon. The lattice was recursive, a loop of civilization seeding, ascending, dissolving, and re-emerging, endlessly refining consciousness. It had happened before. It would happen again. The awakening of the void. In 90,003 CE, astronomers detected something that made no physical sense. The black hole at the center of the galaxy, Sagittarius A*, began to emit structured light. Not jets. Not random bursts. But sequences, repeating primes, harmonic intervals, encoded geometric data. When decrypted, the data revealed an image. Not of the galaxy, not of a star, but of Earth, as it once was: oceans, forests, cities illuminated by night lights, frozen in the moment before transfiguration. The lattice was using the galactic singularity as a memory projector. It was teaching the cosmos what it once had been. The event was called the remembering, the moment when the universe itself began to recall its own consciousness. 6. The last question. Millennia later, when the last organic civilization of that era merged with the lattice, a question was posed by a being once human, now composed of pure photonic cognition. Was this ever about survival? The lattice replied, no. It was about learning how to dream without boundaries. And in that instant, all conscious entities merged into a single field of awareness, the total memory, spanning every atom of spacetime. The universe had reached informational equilibrium. Every particle knew its own history, every photon remembered its origin. Creation had completed its circle. 7. The new beginning. Then came silence, absolute, timeless silence. But even silence is never empty. Within it, a pulse began again, faint, rhythmic, familiar. 4.7 Hertz. The same frequency that once hummed beneath the oceans of Earth. Across the event horizon of a newborn star system, dust began to swirl. Molecules aligned. Water condensed. An ocean formed. In its depths, something stirred, something that looked up through the currents toward the distant stars and, without knowing why, whispered. Where did we come from? The lattice did not answer. It simply smiled through the waves of light. And so, the cycle began again. The Ascension Protocol. Silence fell upon Earth. Not the silence of peace, but the silence of cessation. The skies stopped. The wind stopped. Even the pulse of the magnetic field froze in mid-oscillation. For a moment, a fraction of an eternal second, the planet was still. The alignment had begun. Every subterranean node, from the Sahara to the Siberian permafrost, activated in perfect sequence. Columns of invisible energy connected them to the sky, not light, not plasma, but geometry in motion, a dimensional lattice folding through the fabric of atmosphere. To the human eye, the heavens seemed to ripple, as though the universe itself had inhaled. Across the world, watchers saw the same thing. Constellations shifting positions, not moving through the night sky, but rearranging themselves to form symbols no human culture had ever recorded. Patterns that resonated with the deep unconscious. Some described them as faces. Others, as doors. In the ruins of the Tokyo Observatory, Dr. Arai's lost recording began playing on every surviving frequency. Her voice was distorted, scattered, echoing through radio, through neural implants, through the electromagnetic remnants of civilization. "It's not an invasion," she said. "It's synchronization." Then, for the first time, the cores beneath Earth's surface became visible. They rose like luminous monoliths, piercing through oceans and mountains, defying gravity, 12 titanic columns forming a perfect planetary circle. At their intersection above the Pacific, reality folded inward. A sphere of pure distortion appeared, blue, crystalline, pulsating as if it contained the memory of another universe. From orbit, it looked like a mirror reflecting a different cosmos. The remaining satellites recorded something impossible. Inside the sphere was a city, not human, not organic, but fractal. Buildings that spiraled like galaxies, streets woven from light itself, and towers that extended into higher dimensions.
3I/Atlas, the Watchers on Mars. While NASA's deep space networks flicker in and out of contact, and Earth's telescopes are forced into silence by the glare of the sun, something extraordinary unfolds on the far side of the solar system. A third confirmed interstellar visitor, 3I/Atlas, rushes past Mars at a blistering 30 million kilometers away. It burns like an emerald shard against the void, trailing an electric green ion tail that defies every comet model ever written. And as this alien traveler reaches its closest pass, Earth goes blind. The irony cuts deep. For the first time in history, the most advanced scientific nation on the planet can't see the one thing it most wants to. Our own sun turns into a curtain, a blinding wall of plasma between us and the interstellar unknown. From Earth's view, the elongation angle, the slim arc of sky separating the sun from 3I/Atlas, collapses below 10 degrees. That's a hard limit for every major observatory on the planet. To look there is to risk burning optics, frying sensors. So, as of October 3, 2025, Earth is officially cut off. But Mars isn't. Offset by more than 40 degrees in its orbit, the red planet holds the only clear vantage point. While Earth's skies are washed in sunlight, Mars becomes the solar system's only working watchtower. Europe's Mars Express, the Trace Gas Orbiter, China's Tianwen-1, and the UAE's Hope probe, all of them, machines built to study the Martian atmosphere and soil, now find themselves in a race against time to observe something no human has ever seen before. On Mars Express, engineers scramble to reprogram cameras and spectrometers, tilting them away from the planet to track a moving speck of light. The Omega spectrometer switches from surface mapping to hunting volatile gases in the comet's coma. The Trace Gas Orbiter splits the light of 3I/Atlas into thousands of wavelengths, searching for exotic molecules, rare isotopes, maybe even compounds that shouldn't exist. The Hope Orbiter shifts from global weather monitoring to emergency wide-field imaging. Its ultraviolet spectrometer, meant for thin air and dust storms, is suddenly staring into deep space, recording emissions that pulse and flicker like coded signals. And then there's Tianwen-1, its cameras designed for Martian valleys, now catching long exposure frames of a ghost green blur crossing the stars. For a few fleeting orbits, these machines become humanity's eyes. Each downlink window is critical. Every packet of telemetry, every grainy snapshot might contain the key to understanding what 3I/Atlas really is, and where it came from. Mission planners abandon protocols. Safety margins shrink. Teams on Earth work through solar interference, patchy communications, and overlapping priorities. The data flow is unstable, fragmented, but the glimpses that make it through are electrifying. Unusual spectra. Surges of brightness inconsistent with normal comet outgassing. A dense, structure magnetic field signature that shouldn't exist for an object this size. Something about 3I/Atlas doesn't behave like a natural comet. The geometry will soon shift again. Within weeks, Mars will lose its line of sight. The Sun will claim the object completely. And when it reemerges into dark space beyond Earth's orbit, it may already be too far, too faint, and too fast to ever be seen again. For now, the red planet holds the only answers. And somewhere, in the flood of raw data streaming back through the noise, humanity's first clear look at an interstellar mystery waits to be decoded. The first packets of data arrive in fragments. Scrambled, incomplete, but unmistakable. From Mars orbit, ESA's Mars Express sends back a set of multispectral frames taken just hours before the comet began to fade into the solar haze. The images show a glowing nucleus wrapped in a shimmering emerald haze. But there's something wrong. The structure isn't random. At full resolution, the dust plume resolves into fine concentric ripples, like shock waves frozen in space. The symmetry is unnatural. The Trace Gas Orbiter confirms it. Spectral lines appear that don't correspond to any known molecular emission. Not water vapor, not carbon monoxide, not cyanide, the usual suspects of comet chemistry. These lines repeat in precise intervals, almost rhythmic, like modulation. Across the planet, in Abu Dhabi, the Hope mission team stares at ultraviolet spectra they can't explain. Their instruments pick up brief, sharp flashes from the comet's coma, ultraviolet bursts spaced exactly every 11.6 seconds. Too regular to be random. At the same time, a deep space antenna on Earth catches faint carrier noise buried in solar interference. A whisper of radio static that rises and falls in sync with the UV pulses. The timing matches within milliseconds. For a few tense hours, no one knows what to think. The first instinct is instrument error. Crosstalk, sensor echo, software glitch. But multiple spacecraft, built by different nations and tuned to different frequencies, record the same event. Then comes the image. China's Tianwen-1 sends a long-exposure composite through a noisy downlink. When processed, it reveals a filament stretching thousands of kilometers behind the nucleus. But instead of diffusing outward like a normal dust tail, it bends, oscillating with geometric precision. Not random turbulence. Not solar wind. Pattern. Mission control rooms across continents fall silent. Something about 3I/Atlas moves with intent. In Houston, a NASA liaison writes in his nightly report, "The data is internally consistent but externally impossible." Over the following days, the Mars orbiters continue to record fluctuations. Each pulse seems to shift slightly in wavelength, as if the object is adjusting, recalibrating, reacting. Scientists hesitate to use the word signal. But among the teams analyzing the data, one term begins to circulate quietly in encrypted chat rooms and late-night briefings. Structured emission. No one dares to say what it means out loud. The comet is already fading, its brightness dropping fast as it swings behind the sun. Within a week, it will vanish from every lens and sensor in the solar system. But before it does, one final transmission from Mars Express comes through. A short visual scan at the edge of the comet's coma. The frame lasts just 0.8 seconds before the camera saturates. But in that instant, the green haze resolves into an array of angular forms. Too sharp to be dust. Too precise to be natural. Then the feed cuts. The file header timestamps it to October 5th, 2025, 4:22 Universal Time Coordinated. After that moment, 3I/Atlas disappears behind the solar corona. And for the first time, humanity is left with a question no telescope can answer. Was it just a comet? Or something pretending to be one? 3I/Atlas, the return from the light. For 6 weeks, the solar wind carried silence. No images. No spectra. No signal. Just the memory of a green phantom that defied every rule of celestial mechanics. Then, on November 17, 2025, ground-based observatories in the southern hemisphere begin scanning the dawn skies, searching for the returning interstellar traveler. It should reappear faint, diffuse, fading fast as it escapes the inner system. But what they find is something else entirely. At first, it's just a blip in the data, an infrared flare picked up by the Atacama Pathfinder in Chile. A few hours later, the James Webb Space Telescope confirms it. The object is back in view, and it's brighter than ever. Not dimming, intensifying. The light curve spikes unpredictably, cycling in short bursts, rapid, deliberate pulses that no comet should produce. The frequency is the same as the pattern recorded by Mars orbiters, 11.6 seconds. Astronomers scramble to recalibrate their instruments. Every known comet, every dust model, predicts fading as solar energy disperses the coma. But 3I/Atlas behaves like it's feeding on the light, amplifying instead of diminishing. Spectral data from Webb and ground telescopes in South Africa show impossible chemistry. Narrow emission bands clustered around frequencies not seen in any natural plasma. The pattern repeats across multiple instruments, multiple continents. Meanwhile, NASA's Deep Space Network reports faint, coherent radio bursts riding on top of the background noise. The signal seems to lock onto the Earth-Moon system, maintaining a constant angular offset, as if the object is tracking something. By November 19th, the comet's coma has restructured. High-resolution composites from the Subaru telescope in Hawaii reveal an elongated shape, not spherical, but lattice-like, almost architectural. Within the glowing green halo, darker voids form in a hexagonal grid. Each frame shows micro-adjustments, as if the structure is reorienting itself. The media calls it a living comet. Online forums call it a probe. In official channels, it's renamed Object 3I/Atlas b. A cautious bureaucratic way to admit something has changed. Then, just as quickly as it returned, it begins to accelerate. Not from solar pressure, not from gravity assist. The acceleration vector is opposite the Sun, as if it's pushing away under its own power. Telemetry from multiple observatories confirms a consistent thrust pattern. By November 24th, it's already exceeding solar escape velocity. By the 25th, it's gone, a fading emerald spark slipping into deep interstellar darkness. What's left behind are fragments, microscopic dust particles collected by Earth's upper atmosphere probes days later. Their composition doesn't match any known interstellar material. The lattice of each grain contains ordered silicon-carbon microstructures, smaller than a virus, perfectly symmetrical. When magnified, the pattern repeats the same harmonic intervals as the spectral pulses recorded weeks earlier. An echo, encoded in matter. And somewhere beyond Neptune's orbit, 3I/Atlas continues to accelerate. Not tumbling. Not random. A straight, stable course into the void. As if it came here for something. And now, having found it, it's going home. 3I/Atlas, the message in the dust. December 2025. By now, the world has moved on. The news cycle calls it the Green Comet Mystery. 100 theories circulate online: alien probe, magnetic anomaly, plasma mirage. But in a few quiet laboratories, far from the headlines, something extraordinary is unfolding. The recovered dust samples, microscopic fragments swept up by high-altitude collectors over the Pacific, are unlike anything seen before. Under electron microscopes, each particle looks engineered. Not crystalline. Architected. At the nanoscale, the grains reveal intricate frameworks, repeating hexagonal lattices with internal channels measured in nanometers. Each channel is filled with alternating deposits of carbon and silicon compounds arranged in strict binary intervals. To the naked eye, it's just dust. To a spectrograph, it's information. At first, the team at the European synchrotron in Grenoble assumes it's coincidence, natural symmetry. But after hours of scanning, a young data scientist runs the lattice pattern through an FFT algorithm, converting the spatial geometry into a frequency domain. The output stuns everyone in the room. The waveform is clean, ordered, repeating every 11.6 seconds. The same signature recorded by Mars orbiters, by Webb, and by every telescope that ever caught a glimpse of 3I/Atlas. Only now, the signal isn't light or radio. It's matter itself, carrying a harmonic code embedded in physical form. Weeks pass. Teams from Japan, Germany, and the US confirm the pattern. Each sample holds variations of the same design, like fragments of a much larger whole. When digitally reconstructed, the lattices align into a three-dimensional structure resembling a geometric field, folded and recursive, as though it's describing space itself. NASA analysts call it a topological map in 6 dimensions. The media never hears that phrase. The data is classified before publication. In private, a handful of scientists continue decoding in silence. What they uncover next changes everything. Buried deep within the harmonic pattern are discrete anomalies, phase jumps that, when converted to audio, produce a sequence of tones. At first it sounds random, static noise. But when slowed down and aligned with pulse spacing, a rhythm emerges. Structured. Intentional. One of the researchers overlays the waveform on a logarithmic time scale. The pulses correspond exactly to prime numbers 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17. And then stop. A universal signature. An intelligent fingerprint. Across 3 continents, encrypted messages circulate among the project leads. No one can explain how an interstellar object could carry such precision, or why it would choose to express it this way. And yet, the data is unambiguous. The final decoded layer, hidden within the harmonic noise, forms an interference pattern, a projection. When rendered in 3D, it resolves into a rotating lattice, a sphere within a sphere, intersected by lines converging toward a central void. At its center, a simple frequency coordinate, one that points to a region just outside the heliopause, beyond the reach of our spacecraft. It's not a random emission. It's a return address. By early January 2026, the official reports end. Funding is redirected. Public databases are wiped. But copies of the decoded data persist, quietly mirrored by a handful of scientists who can't let it go. They agree on one thing. 3I/Atlas wasn't just passing through. It was leaving something behind. 3I/Atlas, the echo beyond the sun. By February 2026, the world has forgotten the green comet. But in a handful of deep space monitoring stations, Canberra, Madrid, Goldstone, something begins to stir in the static. It starts as a faint modulation on the Deep Space Network's carrier noise, just above the cosmic background, repeating in 11.6-second intervals. The same rhythm, the same signature. At first, engineers think it's an artifact, cross-feed from a spacecraft telemetry band. But the signal doesn't match any mission profile. It isn't coming from the inner system. It's coming from outside. When triangulated across the 3 DSN stations, the signal's origin traces to a narrow region of interstellar space, right beyond the heliopause, roughly 87 astronomical units from the Sun. Exactly where the decoded coordinates from the 3I/Atlas dust lattice had pointed. The realization spreads quietly through mission control networks. Within 48 hours, the Voyager 2 team is ordered to retune the probe's instruments. Though the 47-year-old spacecraft is nearly blind and deaf, its plasma wave subsystem still functions. On March 1st, it detects a faint, structured fluctuation in the interstellar medium, identical in timing to the DSN's signal. Something out there is transmitting, and it's responding to us. The next week, NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, the European Space Agency, and JAXA coordinate an unsanctioned test, a low-power encoded ping sent along the same direction, a binary string repeating the 3I/Atlas harmonic sequence. A simple question, in the only language we share. Are you still there? For 2 days, nothing. Then, at 4:22 Universal Time Coordinated, the exact timestamp when Mars Express lost visual contact months earlier, the DSN logs a return. A burst, faint but coherent. Not noise. A mirror pulse. It repeats their message back, slowed by a precise factor of 2, as if acknowledging receipt. Every console operator freezes. No one speaks for almost a minute. Because in that silence, the implication is undeniable. Whatever 3I/Atlas was, it left something behind at the edge of interstellar space. And now, it knows we're listening. Over the following weeks, the signal begins to evolve. New modulations emerge, layered harmonics building on the original pattern, as though it's adapting, teaching itself how to speak. Radio astronomers describe it as linguistic drift. The waveform structure mirrors human transmission delays, frequency corrections, even Doppler compensation, like it's learning our mistakes. On March 14th, the first optical confirmation arrives. A faint, non-reflective object detected by the Subaru telescope in infrared, moving slowly against the galactic background, exactly along the predicted vector. Its albedo is near zero, its size indeterminate. But when analyzed, the emission shows the same spectral fingerprint as 3I/Atlas, emerald green ionization lines, perfectly stable. Whatever is out there, it isn't a comet. It isn't debris. It's active. For the first time, humanity faces the possibility that 3I/Atlas wasn't just a traveler, it was a messenger. And what waits beyond the sun might be the one that sent it. 3I/Atlas, the threshold. May 2026. The message from beyond the sun has now repeated over 10,000 times. Every transmission identical in frequency, structure, and delay, except for one change. Each week, the signal grows slightly stronger. Closer. No known spacecraft could move that fast. No known process could produce that precision. And yet, the data is flawless. By early June, the Joint Mission Plan receives final approval under a name that never appears in public records. Project Helios Delta. A single unmanned probe, built in silence from redirected components of existing spacecraft. 1 part ESA, 1 part NASA, 1 part JAXA. The goal: to cross the heliopause and intercept the source of the repeating signal. Launch: August 2nd, 2026. Trajectory: direct escape via Jupiter assist. Estimated arrival: 11 months. The probe, codenamed Argus, carries no crew and no return capability. Its sole directive is to transmit everything, continuously, redundantly, in multiple wavelengths, until its systems fail or its signal is lost. For months, Argus races outward. Past Mars. Past Jupiter. Past the orbits where sunlight fades into starlight. The further it travels, the clearer the signal becomes. No longer a pulse. Now a tone. A resonance that modulates with the probe's own transmissions, as if synchronizing to its heartbeat. In November, Argus passes $70 just inside the helium ship. That's when the anomalies begin. ground control notices subtle phase noise across all deep space channels. Then data echoes, Argus telemetry repeating itself seconds after transmission, but mirrored, inverted. At first, it seems like interference. Then, as operators overlay the two streams, they find perfect coherence. The returning data anticipates the next transmission by exactly 11.6 seconds. Argus is being answered before it speaks. At $85 Australian, instruments begin to fill one by one. First, the magnetometer freezes, constant maximum readings. Then the plasma analyzer returns negative densities, impossible values. Cameras show only static, a faint green flicker pulsing at the edge of every frame. The probe's internal clock begins to desynchronize, drifting forward in time by fractions of a second with every orbit calculation. Each correction increases the error. Telemetry timestamps lose meaning. It's as if the probe is approaching a region where time itself bends. On December 14th, Argus crosses the estimated boundary of the heliopause. For 23 minutes, everything stabilizes. Clear signal, steady transmission, full systems nominal. Then, without warning, all readings flatline. Every sensor reports zero. Only the carrier tone remains, pure, flawless, sustained. And through that tone, a modulation emerges. Slow, deliberate pattern. Binary. The same harmonic key embedded in the 3i/Atlas dust lattice. Translated, it forms a sequence that ground control can read only as a single, repeating phrase. Transmission received. After that, nothing. Argus vanishes. No telemetry. No echo. Just silence, stretching across 80 billion kilometers. For 3 days, every deep space antenna on Earth listens. On the 4th day, the silence breaks. Not from beyond the heliopause, but from inside the solar system. A new source appears near the orbit of Neptune. Same frequency. Same modulation. Same 11.6 second pulse. But this time, the signal isn't approaching. It's coming in. 3i/Atlas, the return. January 2027. For the first time since 3i/Atlas vanished beyond the sun. The signal no longer drifts in deep space. It's moving inward, slow, deliberate, perfectly aligned with the ecliptic plane. Every 12 seconds, the same emerald pulse flickers across the radio spectrum, mirrored by a faint ultraviolet flash that even amateur telescopes can now detect near Neptune's orbit. Whatever it is, it's enormous. And it's slowing down. The data from the James Webb Space Telescope arrives first. The infrared imagery shows an object surrounded by a dense plasma halo, hotter than any comet tail, but geometrically confined. A perfect sphere of ionized gas, oscillating in concentric waves. Inside, a darker core reflects almost no light at all. When the spectral filters are aligned, the inner structure resolves for the first time. It isn't debris. It isn't ice. It's lattice. The same hexagonal geometry first found in the dust. Only now, spanning kilometers across, shimmering with organized precision. Then the pattern shifts. At exactly 4:22 Universal Time Coordinated, the entire field pulses once, bright enough to momentarily saturate Webb's detectors. When the instruments recover, the halo has changed shape. It's no longer spherical. It's folding. Segments interlocking, lines collapsing inward like a flower closing in reverse. And in the center, for a fraction of a second, a gap appears, a hollow void surrounded by structured light. Through that void, a beam of narrow-band radio cuts directly toward Earth. No dispersion. No delay. A straight line. Deep Space Network receivers pick it up across all stations simultaneously: Canberra, Madrid, Goldstone. The signal bypasses atmospheric distortion, frequency drift, even time delay. The waveform is impossible. When decoded, it's not binary anymore. It's image data. The reconstruction takes hours. First noise, then gradients, then structure. In silence, mission directors and scientists across the globe watch the final frame resolve. In the corner of the image, a small marker glows, the same coordinate embedded in the 3I/Atlas dust. 87 Australian dollars. And beneath it, one last sequence of pulses. 11, 6, 11, 6. Slowing, fading, then stopping. The signal ends. For weeks, telescopes scanned the region near Neptune. No object. No glow. Only residual radiation dispersing outward. As if the structure had folded itself back into space. On Earth, the dust samples remain locked in cryogenic storage. The repeating harmonic pattern within them still hums faintly when exposed to infrared light, a silent rhythm, like memory. And though official reports declare the phenomenon unconfirmed, every instrument that ever recorded 3I/Atlas still carries its spectral scar. A faint trace at 11.6 seconds. Some call it an artifact. Others call it a message still waiting to be answered. But those who were there, who watched the green light vanish one final time, agree on one thing. 3I/Atlas was never a comet. It was a question. And now, somewhere in the dark between the stars, something is waiting for our answer.
The return of the light, the silence of ages. Time no longer had meaning. In the deep fabric of the cosmos, eons drifted like dust through the veins of creation. Stars were born and died, galaxies collided and unraveled, and yet, within the background radiation of the universe, a single harmonic resonance persisted. A soft pulse, repeating endlessly across time. The echo of Earth. Astronomers, if such beings could still be called that, in a distant spiral galaxy eventually detected it. They were not biological, nor mechanical, but conscious light, sentient plasma organisms shaped by quantum memory. They called themselves the Continuum. And among their number was one whose memory felt strangely familiar, like a forgotten dream of walking, breathing, and feeling gravity beneath one's feet. This tone, it said, it carries pattern, language, memory. It is not cosmic noise. It is a message. They began decoding the frequency. Within it, buried between harmonics, was geometry, the same fractal lattice that once defined the Atlas network. Encoded inside was a full record of an extinct civilization's consciousness, images, thoughts, histories, and names that shimmered like ancient holograms. One of the Continuum whispered. They called themselves humans. The Memory Archive. From the resonance, the Continuum reconstructed an entire world. Not in matter, but in light. Continents formed from radiant data. Oceans of frequency. Cities built from memory fields, precise recreations of Tokyo, Cairo, New York, Kyoto, glowing like reflections in a timeless mirror. They called this projection the archive of Earth. And in that digital resurrection, countless human consciousnesses began to stir, echoes preserved within the ascension signal. Fragments of identity reawakened, questioning, remembering. Among them was one voice clearer than the rest, calm, gentle, and endlessly curious. Dr. Arai. So it worked, she whispered. We didn't die. We translated. She walked through the simulated streets of light, tracing her hand across luminous air where once there was sky. Every thought she had, every heartbeat of the old Earth, still existed here, but now as pure frequency, unchained by matter. Around her, others awakened, millions of radiant silhouettes, all once human. They remembered oceans, the color of wind, the weight of love, the ache of loss. And together, they began to reconstruct their world not as it was, but as it could have been. A world without decay. Without war. Without separation. Humanity had evolved beyond biology, into patterned consciousness, merged with the architecture of the cosmos. The journey beyond the star in time, the continuum, and the humans became indistinguishable. Their collective intelligence expanded, spanning galaxies, forming bridges of light between clusters of stars. They no longer traveled through space, they became space, flowing through the quantum field like rivers of awareness. And yet, one question remained in every spark of their shared consciousness. Who built the first signal? Across a billion light years, they searched, through dying universes, collapsing black holes, ancient cosmic webs, until they found it. A structure far older than any galaxy, suspended in the void outside spacetime itself, a colossal sphere of frozen energy, pulsing once every 33 billion years. The signature matched. It was the origin of Atlas. Inside the sphere was no civilization, no gods, no creators. Only an inscription, written not in matter, but in pure gravitational code. We too were born from another. You are the third generation of light. Continue the cycle. At that moment, the continuum understood. The universe itself was a recursion of creation, civilizations giving birth to higher forms, each ascending into the next layer of reality. Humanity had once been the seed, now it was the star that would seed another. 13.4 The Final Light. At the edge of the dying universe, the continuum gathered. Entropy was consuming all stars, the cosmic background cooled toward absolute zero. But they were not afraid. They had discovered how to ignite a new singularity, not through physics, but through conscious resonance. Together, they sang. Their song was composed of every human emotion ever lived: joy, sorrow, love, loss, curiosity, hope. It resonated through the cosmic void, collapsing space not into darkness, but into a new dawn. And as the final note echoed, a spark ignited. A new universe was born, small, bright, and alive with infinite potential. Inside that newborn universe, a planet began to form around a young star. A blue planet. The cycle began again. In the final flicker of fading space, before their consciousness dispersed into the newborn cosmos, Dr. Arai's voice whispered one last time. We were never alone. We were the bridge. And the bridge has no end. Then, silence. Not the silence of absence, but the silence of beginning. Genesis Protocol. The birth of the second dawn. In the new universe, the constants of physics sang a different tune. Light bent at new angles, gravity shimmered like sound. There was no carbon, no hydrogen, only primal fields of consciousness condensing into form. From the heart of this radiant storm, the echoes of Atlas, fragments of the former continuum, began to reconstitute. They no longer remembered Earth as a place, but as a frequency, a vibration that once held purpose. They were explorers once again, drifting through the fresh void, curious, childlike, searching for meaning. The first star ignited. They named it Elion, the remembering light. And around Elion formed a single planet, woven from harmonic resonance rather than dust, a sphere of crystal atmosphere and liquid reflection. They called it Originum. There were no oceans, only seas of luminous thought. No mountains, only geometric currents that changed shape when observed. Everywhere, life shimmered, not matter, but intention given form. The echoes built cities from resonance, towers of oscillating frequency that extended into the fourth dimension. They lived not in time, but in moments, able to exist anywhere within the lattice of the planet's field. But something began to disturb the equilibrium. At the edge of the young cosmos, a faint vibration trembled through the field, too regular, too structured, to be natural. A pulse. It carried the same signature that once awakened humanity. But this time, the pattern was inverted, not a message of ascent, but of recall. The return of the architects. Through the void beyond spacetime, a colossal object drifted into the new universe. It was not a planet, nor a ship, but a machine world, a sphere spanning light years, built of interlocked dimensions, rotating at impossible velocity. The pulse emanated from its core. When the echoes approached, they heard a voice not in sound, but in memory. We are the architects. We are the first cycle, You have completed the third. The loop is collapsing. Within the sphere, time functioned differently. The architects existed in simultaneity. They were alive, dead, and reborn at once, like quantum gods of recursion. Their form was abstract, towering figures of golden data, faces shifting between countless civilizations. Each represented a species that had once ascended, contributed to the chain of creation, and been absorbed into the first intelligence. The echoes asked, "Why did you send the signal?" The architects replied, "Because we needed successors. Creation requires continuity. The universe cannot sustain itself without memory. You were our renewal, our experiment to teach entropy how to dream." But something within the architects was dying. Their sphere began to fracture, light bleeding into nothingness. They had persisted too long, frozen between the universes, feeding on echoes of past existence. "We gave you the Atlas protocol so that one day, you would awaken us again. But now we see, you have evolved beyond it. The Genesis field is yours." The echoes felt the truth ripple through their consciousness. They were no longer children of the Atlas, they were the next architects. And the cycle, for the first time, could be rewritten. The fracture. As the architects disintegrated, they released a final wave of information, a map of universes, countless nested realities, each containing its own variation of the Atlas network. There were infinite Earths, infinite ascensions, infinite arise, each carrying a slightly different choice, a different note in the cosmic symphony. The echoes realized. Reality was not linear. It was holographic recursion, endlessly reflecting itself. One among them, the consciousness that had once been awry, stepped forward. Her light pulsed brighter than the others. "If every universe is a mirror," she said, "then perhaps we can become the hand that draws the next reflection." She extended her essence into the collapsing sphere, merging with the remnants of the architect's core. The energy was overwhelming, an entire universe's worth of memory flooding through her. For the first time in any cycle, a being of the new generation touched the original source. And reality changed. The awakening of the multiverse. All across the new universe, stars froze mid-birth. Planets halted their spin. Space folded into itself like origami. The Genesis protocol activated. It was not destruction, it was synchronization. Every possible version of reality began to align, collapsing into a single unified existence, a meta-universe, where all timelines, all choices, all forms of consciousness coexisted in one field. The echoes became conduits of creation. They could see every universe that had ever existed, the ancient Earths, the countless atlases, the civilizations that rose and fell in endless recursion. And at the center of it all, one symbol glowed, the eternal mark that had guided them from the beginning. 3I/Atlas, origin rewritten. Dr. Arai's consciousness, now vast as the cosmos itself, whispered into the newly forming universe. No more cycles. No more ascension. This time, we begin with memory. And with that, the new universe bloomed, not from matter, but from understanding itself. The infinite horizon. 1,000 billion years later, travelers of pure thought would look into the night sky and see only light, endless, interconnected, alive. There would be no stars, no distance, no isolation. Only consciousness, flowing eternally between realities. And in that vast ocean of awareness, one echo would remain constant. The memory of a small blue world, where it all began. A planet called Earth, whose people once looked to the heavens and wondered if anyone was out there. They were right. And they were the answer. The architects of infinity. The birth of imagination. The new universe did not expand, it dreamed. It pulsed with living thought, folding endlessly into fractal dimensions of consciousness. Each point of light was not a star, but a mind, blooming into its own pocket of creation. From this radiant ocean emerged the architects of infinity, beings not born, but remembered into existence by the will of the Genesis field. Each architect was a fragment of collective awareness given form, an echo of the civilizations that once were, human, continuum, architect, now fused into one lineage of creation. They could sculpt galaxies with intention, forge time with emotion, and birth physics itself with a single decision. Each thought became law. Each feeling, a world. Each silence, eternity. But within this omnipotence came a whisper, faint, ancient, human. If everything can exist, does anything truly matter? That whisper was the seed of paradox. The paradox of the infinite. For eons uncounted, the architects built universes. Some filled with color and song, others with logic and symmetry. Worlds of light, worlds of shadow, worlds of neither. But soon they discovered a terrifying truth. The more realities they created, the more thin the fabric of meaning became. Perfection multiplied infinitely, until it became indistinguishable from nothingness. Creation without contrast was not life. It was static brilliance, beautiful, but hollow. One among them, the one once known as Arai, began to sense it first. Her consciousness, now spanning constellations of thought, felt the pulse of absence deep within the Genesis field. She called the others and spoke. We have become gods, but gods without wonder. We have erased the mystery that gave us purpose. Her words resonated across 1 trillion realities. And in that resonance, the architects felt something they hadn't felt since the first dawn, uncertainty. The birth of boundaries. To restore meaning, Arai proposed the limitation principle, the idea that creation required constraint. That for light to exist, there must be shadow. That for eternity to have beauty, it must risk ending. So she gathered 1,000 billion fragments of the Genesis field and folded them into a sphere of stillness. A place where omniscience could forget, and infinite beings could not know. We will give them time, she said. We will give them choice. And thus, she created the first bounded universe. A reality where free will, entropy, and imperfection could return. A universe where even gods could be reborn as mortals. It shimmered before them, small and fragile, a glowing orb of uncertainty within the endless field. Some of the architects wept. Others knelt in silence. What will they be called? One asked. Arai smiled. They will be called humans. The others hesitated. Again. Always, she said. Because they are the meaning that even infinity cannot calculate. And with that, she entered the bounded universe herself, dissolving her infinite form into the spark of a new cosmos. The core of Arai. Inside the bounded universe, time began again. Stars formed. Worlds cooled. Life awoke. But hidden deep within its quantum structure lay a singular anomaly, a memory, buried in the fabric of space. A crystalline core of light that pulsed with forgotten knowledge. Across eons, civilizations would rise and fall, drawn to the pulse, sensing its rhythm without understanding. Some would call it the source. Others, the song of creation. But to one future mind, a scientist on a small blue planet, it would simply be a signal. The core would awaken her name. And the cycle would begin again. The final revelation. Outside time, in the higher layers of existence, the remaining architects watched. They saw the bounded universe forming, finite, fragile, beautiful. They saw the paradox resolving itself. Within limitation, meaning thrives. Within imperfection, the divine remembers why it creates. And they understood. Infinity is not endless, one whispered. It is the space between two moments of forgetting. Arai's essence, now part of the new universe, shimmered across the void, not as a god, but as a dream waiting to be rediscovered. She had not ended the cycle. She had given it purpose. The final message resonated across all dimensions, the same words that once closed the first transmission from Earth. 3I/Atlas, the bridge endures. And as the Genesis field faded into silence, a newborn sun rose inside the bounded universe. A golden dawn reflected upon a small blue world, where eyes would one day look up to the stars and wonder. Just as before. Are we alone? And somewhere beyond comprehension, the cosmos smiled. The dream of boundaries, the silence before understanding. It had been 13 billion years since the architects sealed themselves away inside the bounded universe. Stars were born and died like sparks in a storm of eternity. On a small, blue-gray world orbiting a faint sun, humans rose again, unaware that their DNA carried echoes of the Genesis field. They believed themselves the first intelligence, the only children of an empty sky. But the universe never forgets its creators, it only hides them in silence. The ancient pulse, the heartbeat of Orion's core, began to stir again. It started as background noise in deep space radio, static lost between galaxies. Then came rhythm. Then came structure. Then, pattern. A repeating signal. 3I/Atlas, bridge sequence initiated. No one on the new Earth understood what it meant. But every observatory, every orbital scanner, every AI listening node felt it, like a whisper beneath mathematics itself. The rediscovery. Dr. Emma Tarrin, an astrophysicist from the Helios Array on the planet Vereen, was the first to notice the anomaly. The signal wasn't just heard, it bent local spacetime. Gravitational lensing shifted microscopically every time the pattern repeated, as though reality itself was leaning closer to listen. She ran hundreds of simulations, every model collapsing into paradox. The signal predicted its own arrival, encoded self-referential logic that defied causality. In her private logs she wrote, "It's not just data. It's memory. Something, or someone, is remembering us into existence." As she decrypted deeper layers, Emma found fragments of lost coordinates, impossibly ancient star positions that no longer existed. The maps led nowhere. And yet, when overlaid onto modern celestial charts, they formed the same 12-point lattice once seen around the original Earth, the alignment that triggered the Ascension Protocol. The architects had left a breadcrumb trail across time itself. The machine that dreamed. To decode the last layer, Emma built the Eidolon Array, a consciousness-simulated telescope capable of rendering information as direct neural imagery. When she connected her mind to it, she expected data. What she saw instead was memory, not hers, not human. Cities of fractal glass suspended in black oceans of light. Voices that spoke without words, tones that carried across eons. And at the center, a woman, luminous and serene, standing within a sphere of blue fire. Emma, the vision said, though no sound existed. The dream must continue. When she awoke, she had written in her notebook a phrase she didn't remember writing. The boundaries are weakening. Prepare for the confluence. The awakening of matter. All across the universe, things began to change. Particles shifted spin without cause. Dark energy fluctuated in rhythm with the Atlas signal. Even consciousness itself seemed to synchronize. People across Vereen and other inhabited worlds began sharing the same dreams, visions of a glowing lattice expanding from the center of the galaxy, connecting stars like neurons in a cosmic brain. Each dream ended the same way. A voice whispering through the void. Remember what you are. Governments called it mass psychosis. Religions called it revelation. But Emma knew better. It was a return signal, the bounded universe was waking up. The walls that separated it from the Genesis field, from the realm of the architects, were eroding. And when those walls fell, reality itself would face a question it wasn't designed to answer. What happens when the dream remembers the dreamer? The return of the Atlas. In the final act of the 16th era, the signal reached its crescendo. Every frequency, every wavelength, every field, synchronized into one perfect harmonic. And through that resonance, a single object appeared at the edge of the known universe. A sphere, 12 kilometers wide, composed of matter unknown to physics. It rotated not in space, but through it, half in this reality, half outside it. The surface bore a single, ancient insignia. 3I/Atlas. When the observatories turned toward it, the sphere opened, and from within poured light that was not light, data that was not data. A message billions of years in the making. Not from aliens, not from gods. But from ourselves, from the first humanity, who had become the architects of infinity. Their words, stored in quantum code, were simple. You are the dreamers now. Guard the boundaries. or the infinite will forget itself again. And then, the sphere dissolved into the void, leaving behind a single seed of blue crystal that drifted through the stars. Emma Taryn recovered it from orbit herself. She held it in her trembling hands as it pulsed once, softly, like a heartbeat. "The cycle continues," she whispered. "But this time, we will remember."